right. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another Future Focus update. This update, given it's the beginning of the year, a little bit of a variant. So last week I did an interview on philosophy and ethics and its importance in the AI age. This week I opted to do, and I debated this. So if you roll your eyes when I tell you what it is, let me give you some context before you click off. It is my biggest realistic predictions for 2025. Now, I debated whether I was going to do a predictions or not because, I see tons of these things out there. But what I wanted to do was something slightly different. Rather than just run through the top 10 of all the different things that I think, everybody else is saying is going to happen, I wanted to hit on 10 of what I think are the most realistic ones and give some context to them, hopefully to help you feel more prepared for what's coming. So my goal isn't to be alarmist or to freak people out or make these insane predictions, but to be able to say, based on everything I'm seeing, these are the things I think realistically every one of us is going to have to wrestle through in 2025, regardless of whether you're a consumer, whether you're a business leader, whether you're whatever, we're all going to have to deal with. And this was largely fueled by, I took some time, I did a digital detox over the holidays. And one of the things I did during that time was, while I wasn't making content, I was interacting with a lot of folks from all over. And in those interactions, one of the things that often came up in conversations was people would ask me, what do you think I'm gonna have to deal with in the next year based on all this stuff you're seeing happening? What personally do you think I might have to wrestle with? And that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun because people were, from all different walks of life. And it was fun going, well, I think based on your unique situation, you're probably going to see more of this and this is going to hit you. But they were all over the place. So what I wanted to do was say, well, I don't know who you are, whoever you are listening or watching this, but out of all of the different things, I think I was able to distill this down to 10 things. I think regardless of who you are, you probably are going to have to be prepared for in 2025 and things you're going to have to wrestle through, both good and challenging. And my goal is to help set expectations and prepare you for what's to come so that when it starts happening, you're not like completely blindsided. Now, I also wanted to do this because I want to check back in on this mid-year and at end of year to see how we're tracking on this. Maybe it's the HR executive in me wanting to have goals, even though they're not my goals for us as a society based on where I see us going and what I think is going to happen, so I can measure against those and see how we're progressing. I don't know, but I thought it would be helpful. So if you find it helpful, let me know. If you say, Christopher, we don't need another predictions, well, then send me that message too. And then I'll take that into consideration on whether I'll do a mid-year check-in or end of year check-in. But I also thought this would be kind of a fun and neat addition to 2025. All right. That's the intro. Before we jump into it, let me just run through, thank you for those of you who watch and support this. Like, share, if you know somebody who'd benefit, all those things, please. It does help me a lot as things continue to grow. Tell somebody about it, whatever. Okay, let's get into the top 10. And I'm going to try and clip through these relatively quickly, not to skip over them, but I don't want this to be a 4-hour, dissertation on what the top 10 things are. And I think what you'll see is after this week, then as I start sharing stories, I think you're going to see how they start to fit into this framework. Now, I'm not going to curate the stories based on this list, but I'm actually going to be watching to see if the stories that stand out in the trajectory we're on actually end up coming back and matching to this, which is part of why I want to check in on it throughout the year. So let's see what happens, but let's get into it. All right. So the first one that I think realistically we all are going to start seeing in 2025 is a significant increase in emotional AI. Now, the data behind this is that this is probably one of the biggest markets that's predicted to grow. And when I say emotional AI, I mean use cases for AI that are more human-like in their application. So rather than interacting with a real human being when you take a customer service call, you're going to interact with an AI bot. Instead of when you go to the doctor's office and your nurse comes in and talks you through kind of, hey, where are you? What are you feeling? All this stuff. It's going to be an AI agent that you talk to through your phone or something like that. So by the time you get to the doctor's office, you're going to just, whoop, go in and straight see the doctor and they're going to have everything. I'm even seeing this in some of the mental health spheres. Well, rather than talking to a real counselor, what if we sign you up for an AI counselor, and only if things escalate do we actually connect you to a live agent? It's all being done in the idea of improving customer experience, health outcomes, things like this. Because the reality is, if you're a consumer, we all know it's frustrating when you spend 2 hours in the waiting room and then you go into a doctor's office and a nurse asks you a whole bunch of just really rote questions and you just feel like you're nothing more than a number. So I get it. They don't have a lot of time. And so can AI help with some of this stuff? Maybe. Can it be helpful if you just need to bounce something off your head, to talk to an AI psychological counselor to at least get your thoughts together and have it kind of analyze, hey, how's this person responding? Do they actually need the help of somebody who is a real human being to help? I see where it's coming from. So the demand is there. And I think the demand isn't just companies want it, people want it. And I talk to people where they're more open to the idea of, I'm not necessarily, we're seeing some of the resistance to AI start to drop, where people go, I'm not opposed to talking to AI. I just want to know I'm talking to AI, and I want to know that I will have the opportunity to talk to a person if I need to, that kind of stuff. So not only are we seeing this reduction in people's resistance to AI, we're also seeing companies with the demand for it because they can't keep up with the demand. And there's this constant pressure to perform better, make more money, be more efficient, do more with less, blah, 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 blah. And then on the investor VC tech front, this is one of the largest growing segments as the models are actually reaching a maturity where they can do this relatively well. And I say that very carefully because of some very concerning research that is coming out about how these things are behaving when, not monitored and even when monitored. But anyway, my point is we're at this kind of sweet spot of intersection where I think we are going to start to see this grow. I think that's a double-edged sword. And that's what's going to be interesting to watch in 2025. I think inevitably we're going to see some exponential growth in this area. The question is going to be how much of this is going to be well used and it's actually going to lead to better outcomes. How much of it is going to be just noise that ends up being really costly and not all that effective. And companies end up going, we did this, it didn't really work. We're just going to go back to the way it was. Kind of like back, I don't remember when it was, when every company thought like offshoring was like the greatest idea ever. And wow, look how much money we save when we offshore. And then they realized by the time they did it, it wasn't really all that much cheaper. And the negative impact on customer scores was bad. They were losing. And so then people kind of went, I don't really know if this is the best decision all the time. So I think we're going to see some of that. The other thing that I'm still not sure of, which to me would be a big X factor, is are we going to see some major blow up of this where people become over dependent on it, whether that's on the consumer side or the company side, and this blows up majorly. Now, how far the adoption curve goes, I think is going to depend on those factors. Are we, where are we going to go? But I think inevitably in 2025, we are going to see exponential growth here. So be prepared for it. I actually just had a friend text me the other day where they shared a text conversation they were having with someone, and they happened to just ask, is this a person? Because it did feel like a very human interaction, and said, yeah, absolutely, this is a person. And then they said, can you give me the Python code for, and they named some app, and within seconds it spit back out the the code for it. And immediately they're like, you just lied to me. And then it proceeded to defend itself. And so the whole thing, which again eroded trust, made him question this whole thing. So we're in some very dangerous territory, in some volatile, I won't say dangerous, I'll say volatile territory. But I think it's something that we need to be prepared for as we go into 2025. So there's that one. Number 2, deepfakes. Let's talk deepfakes, because they're going to, I fully anticipate, reach levels we've never seen before. I read a survey somewhere, I think it was Gardner put it out, that like 90% of content produced in 2025 is going to be AI generated. That to me is really sad. Now, granted, when I hear the term AI generated content, my, I don't know, tech dar always goes off where I go, what do you really mean when you say that though? Because is someone who, like, does that mean AI was used at any point in the creation process? Like if they had AI, if they used Grammarly to review what they wrote, isn't that AI created if they accepted any of the recommended changes? And granted, I get that's an extreme case, but where do you draw the line of what is AI generated? I don't know. And I don't think we have a universal answer for that, which is why I think it's, you got to be a little careful when you see some of these stats around everything's going to be AI generated. But I think what we're already seeing based on another study that I was reading is that people are using AI to create so much stuff now. It's actually almost harder to find truly human created stuff. Like you watch many videos on YouTube or listen to many podcasts anymore. I even had somebody tell me, Christopher, you know what you should do? You should just make a second podcast. And the second podcast is nothing but an AI analyzing your script or analyzing your transcript from your podcast and then coming up with an argument against you and then have it produce that. And it can be an AI voice doing an AI. And I'm like, I don't know that we just need another podcast having AI argue. I don't know that that's adding value. So not only do I think it's reaching a crisis level in that there's just so much noise, it's going to be difficult for people to even know where to look anymore. I think it also goes into the, even things that are AI generated, they're created by someone for some purpose. And I think that's the part that I get nervous about when I think about this is we don't always know who's behind that content. And I think that's the concerning part, especially is it's becoming harder and harder to know where did this even come from and what is the real source of this so that I can start to qualify, well, maybe this is AI generated, but it was created by this institution. And I know this institution is committed to these things. So even if it's generated by AI, I know and trust that institution. That's, I think, the part that's more concerning is it's becoming less and less easy to detect where that is. Now, some of the things that we'll have to watch for, I know there's a huge push for more detection of AI. I don't think that's going to be helpful because, again, we don't have clear criteria. Well, what even is AI generated? But I think the thing that everybody just, I have said this so many times in so many of my podcasts, to be prepared for this is, one, slow down, take every thought captive before you respond, before you comment, before you like, before you share, before you have an emotional response to things. Take a moment to just dig in and go, what even is this? Where is this coming from? Is there truth to it? I will do my best to continue on here, even though I'm responding to kind of breaking headlines and some of the biggest things happening in the space. You might see a clickbaity headline. You might initially hear me respond with some of the hype behind what's happening, but my plan is to continue following that up with the deeper, nuanced breakdown of, but what does this really mean? Yes, is it exciting that Google broke the metasphere or whatever, sure, and that's what everybody's saying, but then let's talk about practical examples. And my goal is to continue to help be a voice in that. But as you look to other voices, it's going to be really important that, one, you're advocating for transparency in this stuff. Don't just sign up for things just because. It's going to be important that you validate your sources and say, who is telling me this and what are their motives? Do they have certain motives? And maybe, what are they actually trying to get out of this? And do you trust that? And be careful that you don't just listen to digital detection systems, because I've known many creators who literally created things with their hands that were then deemed AI created. So it's not a foolproof system. So I think this is just going to be one of those things that we have to slow down, be prepared for, not let our emotions get the best of us, and think critically. I think it's going to need to be the year of critical thinking, especially with this rise in deepfakes. All right, number 3. I fully anticipate we are going to see a mega spike in mental health problems in 2025 and really in the coming years. And I'm going to say this in a couple different ways. I think one, the pace of change and the pace of progress that we're pushing right now is unsustainable. It's flat out unsustainable. We as a civilization, as a society, cannot maintain this trajectory. And I read a study from Gallup over the holidays that was talking about the fact that like 75% of tech workers are burned out. And it's not surprising. When every frontier model has to be released in the next month or quarter or whatever, and there's just so much pressure. We got to do more. We got to build more. We got to get more out there type of a thing. That's not sustainable. And so I think we're going to see people burning out faster than they have before. And I'm going to encourage you to slow down and not buy into this for your own sake. But I also think as we think about, we already were seeing significant rises in anxiety and depression. And I think those trends are only going to continue as people become deeper into their echo chambers, going back to the deepfake stuff. People are going to surround themselves by people who might not even be people. Going back to the deepfakes, I mean, Zuckerberg's on record going, we're going to create a bunch of AI people on the platform. It's going to become harder and it's going to be easier to go into your sphere of people that you think are exactly like you, which you think is going to make you happy, but actually makes you really miserable and depressed. And you don't really have deep, intimate relationships with any of these people. And it feels very shallow and hollow. And we're seeing that with chatbot dependence and some of the really, really tragic outcomes that are coming from that. So not only is it the workers who are pushing and creating and doing more, and the workers, not just in tech, but in other areas who are going to face continual pressure to do more and do things faster and do it more efficiently and do more with less. But then on top of it, we aren't balancing that with the relationships and the social circles of people who help us cope and work through that. And we're isolating ourselves, not in the, everybody needs to go out and touch grass. That's not what I mean. But we're isolating ourselves from the diversity of people who challenge us to think differently, who maybe make us feel a little uncomfortable. But in the end, we can shake hands and say, you know what? I appreciate that. Like, you did that out of love. You did that because you saw me going down a path you thought might harm me. And so you maybe pushed me out of the way. And I didn't like that at first, but I'm actually glad you did because it helped me be in a better spot. And so as we come into 2025, I think, one, we need to be really careful how dependent we're becoming on AI to make decisions for us. If you're relegating your life to AI or your company to AI and you're just saying, just let it do it for me, I think that's going to sound great on the surface, but it's going to be very hollow and empty and lead to a lot of really tragic outcomes. And that's really what you're doing when you start to engage with chatbots and find yourself in echo chambers, is you just end up going, I don't really want to deal with the hard stuff. I want the easy path. And it ends up leading to a really miserable existence. And I really have concerns that we're going to see a lot more of this. And I don't think it's going to necessarily be these groundbreaking changes. I think it's going to be the subtle changes that slowly start nudging us into this territory. So we'll see where we go with that. On to number 4. As it comes to AI, as we came into Q4, I saw an interesting trajectory that made me kind of go, ooh, this is going to be more of a both and instead of a either or. Because where I was watching as we went through the end of 2024, I really was starting to think, based on what I was seeing, that we were starting to kind of hit the ceiling of AI's capability, which was going to force us not necessarily to back away from AI, but to start to move further into the adoption phase, which I think is very much going to happen. Okay, I think we're, like I said earlier, we're getting a little more comfortable with AI. People are more comfortable experimenting. They're willing to do things with this. The overall acceptance of this by customers and consumers and employees is starting to go up as people feel a little less scared of AI. So I think we're going to start to see adoption, and some of the value it's going to create is going to be very appealing. I thought, though, that that was just going to be because, well, there really wasn't anywhere else for AI to go. But then I see things like NVIDIA dropping a $3,000 supercomputer that can run the latest and greatest in AI models for $3,000 that a consumer can have in their house. And quantum computing gets released into the mainstream at the end of 2024. And I went, whoa. And we start figuring out, I just saw a thing the other day of a desktop fusion reactor that can power your home for 10 years type of a thing, or fission reaction. I think it was still fission. Anyway, point is, like a household, basically battery power plant that you can get for your house. And I start to go, yikes. So some of the bottlenecks I was thinking we were going to hit in 2025, compute power, sustainability, power consumption, things like that, we're quickly finding answers to those problems. And so I think we're going to see the adoption curve start to flatten out, and we're going to start to see it spread wider. And I think we're going to see it continue to explode and become more advanced. Now, is it a guarantee? No, because some of the things that I'm seeing, Apollo research, Palisade research, they're starting to investigate some of these frontier models. We're starting to see some very concerning, nefarious behavior out of these things. And is that going to slow people down? Yes. Is that going to make people go, these things, they're getting better, but some of the risks that are coming with these more advanced versions are not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze. Now, to me, those are some of the questions we're going to be wrestling through in 2025. I don't know that we have the answers quite yet, but right now the trajectory for progress, or the push for progress, is still so huge, and those bottlenecks have opened up. I think we're going to continue to see explosive growth in the capability while also seeing explosive expansion in that. Now, we will see, and I will continue to hopefully keep you informed on what those things look like and where we're going with it. This is one of the things that I think is going to be unfortunate. I don't, again, until I start seeing the things actually happen, I think, again, every single one of these predictions I have, I don't see, like, is it going to be good, Christopher, or is it going to be bad? I think my answer to that is just yes. It's going to be good and bad. And so this next one is another example of this. Unemployment as a result of automation is going to be extremely tangible in 2025. I've said for a long time, AI absolutely is going to eliminate jobs. I just feel there's a path where in that job elimination, it's just literally changing jobs, not necessarily eliminating them. Unfortunately, as I continue talking with business leaders and companies who are buying this myth that AI can easily replace human capability, I think we are going to start to see automation negatively impact employment for a lot of people. And I think people are going to start to feel this in areas that we kind of have said, oh, it's not coming for that. I also think about the fact that, while yes, we can say, well, AI can change jobs and people can reskill and upskill, which I'll talk about in a little bit here, that takes time. And we're moving at a really, really quick pace. And so this, like, taking the time, which we don't have a great track record of taking the time to actually do this stuff, I think is going to leave some people in this position where companies go, yeah, well, I mean, technically there is a job available, but you're not qualified and I don't see a path to you getting there. So thank you for your service and, all the best in what you do. And so I do think we are going to start to see this. Now, like I said, in all my stuff, my goal is never to sit and ring alarm bells and go, oh my gosh, does this mean we're all going to be out of work in 2025? No, I don't think that's the case at all. But I think to some of the skeptics who have said, I don't really believe this, I don't think it's coming for me, I think we're going to really start to see this hit home. And that's where I will continue pleading with people, do not wait until it hits you to start preparing for the changes that are coming as a result of AI. Focus on building those skills that AI can't maybe can replace, but can't replace without the guidance of a human expert. Build that expertise, really develop yourself as an expert in what you do, and be a critical thinker. Be somebody who can empathize and contextualize things. Those are going to be sustainable skills. And they are things that already companies knew and have known for a long time. Our people don't really have the level of these skills that they really need. It's gaps already, which is why they're so quick to adopt AI, because they look at this and go, oh, those are the risks of AI. Well, we already have those risks with people. So technically, we might as well take the risk on AI because it's cheaper and more efficient and doesn't need breaks. And I don't agree with that conclusion, to be clear, but I'm already starting to see companies move in that direction. So just be prepared for that. And for, if you're somebody who's just thinking, nah, I'm just going to kind of coast into retirement, or I'm just going to coast and wait and see what happens, I would just caution you that that may not be a wise path in 2025, and not to, ring the alarm bell or incite fear, but more to say this is going to become, I think, a very realistic thing to start happening on larger scales. And it already has been, so it's not like brand new, but I think it's going to start to hit industries and areas that we didn't really think it was going to, or we thought we had more time. Now, on that, I think what this is going to push, this is number 6, what this is going to push for companies is they are going to have to rethink employability, employment, skills, jobs. This is going to become forced through this. And I'm already seeing this because in some of the AI initiatives where companies maybe aren't replacing their employees with AI, but really are starting to automate and augment some of their jobs with AI, there's this perception that, well, if we just throw AI in the mix, it'll just figure it out. And that's not how AI works. And this is forcing companies to have to go, well, okay, so if we still need people, what do those people do? And do we still need them the way we needed them before? And whether they like it or not, they're now having to answer these questions. And so I think some of the things we've talked about for years about, well, the job description is ridiculous and resumes are stupid and jobs as we know them don't really make sense. It's always been more of a pipe dream of, yeah, but why would we change it? Because it works. And I think in 2025, a lot more companies are going to start feeling the pain of kicking this down the road and having ignored this for a long time and recognizing, oh, crap, we actually need people to do different things, and we need to base their jobs on, and we might need to think of more creative employment agreements, because maybe we don't need people to work for us the way that they always did. And maybe people aren't even interested in working for our company the way they historically have. And I think we're going to start to see this really, really change. Now, do I think it's going to be radically different? I'm not going to make a silly prediction like job descriptions aren't going to exist in 2025. College degrees aren't going to be needed. Any of that kind of stuff, because that's not realistic. Systems are slow to change. But I think we are going to start to see this flex and bend as we go into 2025, as some of this emotional AI starts to take off, as some of these agental AI start to implement and integrate into things, as people start burning out and getting frustrated and deciding they don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. And companies go, well, now what do we do? Because what we were doing before isn't working. I think it's going to force some of that. Now, number 7, which is tied to this one. Oh, well, so going back to it before I tie to number 7, for number 6, what do I think that means? For companies, I think if you're still planning on kicking your whole skills work, your whole, how you do jobs and the way you employ people, and we don't really do gig work and we don't really do this. We hire people into traditional jobs because that's how we've always done it. This would not be a good year to kick that one down the road. I know companies have been kicking this down the road for a long time. It would be a good year to actually, fund that project and get it in motion. If you're an employee, I think where you're going to need to put this into practice is, are you even aware of what skills you have? And that's one thing that I encounter a lot of people where they'll tell me what their job is, but I go, yeah, but what are you good at? What do you do? And that sometimes is met with a blank stare, because a lot of folks just go, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm the director of marketing. And you go, yeah, okay. But what do you do? Like, what is it that you actually are really good at? What are you passionate about? What are the skills that you've built? And a lot of times employees don't know that. Now, granted, do companies have to shift before employees feel the pressure of that and feel they have to do it? Yes. But similar to the pressure I'm putting on companies, do you really want to wait till you have no choice but to do it? I don't think so. And I would say the same to employees. Do you really want to wait until the whole job market changes and you're left scrambling, wondering how to even describe what it is you do because you've just always described yourself as your job title? And now companies are going, we don't have that job. So what tangible skills do you have that we can put to work? And you haven't thought about it. This would be a good year to be thinking about that. Now, fueling this whole thing, let's jump to number 7. I can almost hear, and even in myself sometimes I feel the groan of the thought of talking about return to office. But I think in 2025, we're going to continue to see this one. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to see the polarization of it. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, it was actually really wonderful. We kind of saw the harmonization of it. People came together and they said, you know what? Who cares where people work? We're just getting our work done. It'll be great. And it was because they had no choice but to do that. And now we're going back. And now because people have the option, you're seeing people go into their camps. And I think that's really destructive. And I think it's concerning that we're going to see more of this start to erode as people go, well, are you an in-office company or are you a remote company? And it's like, we're putting an arbitrary choice in place. We're putting an arbitrary culture decision in place that we don't need to. But I think it's almost a reaction to what we saw in this harmonization of how work got done. And now that grid that kind of held everybody into it was let go, we kind of had the natural bounce back, which I think is unfortunate, but I think it's going to be something we're going to have to wrestle with. So for companies, my push to you is don't buy into this. Please don't buy into this idea that you have to force a in-office culture or a flexible culture. Just figure out what makes sense, empower leaders to figure it out, and trust your people. And I think that ties to some of this skills and burnout stuff that we're dealing with that is really going to hit. You're going to have people that are really struggling. You're going to be trying to figure out how to make AI work alongside that. Then on top of it, you're going to have to rethink skills and all this. It's not the year to be focusing on where people's butts are when they're doing it really is not the year. And that's not me advocating, hey, everybody go remote. I'm just saying this might be the year to maybe pull back off that. And I really hope that this prediction is false. I sincerely hope that when I check in on this mid-year, turns out everybody realized this was a really stupid thing to be planting our flag on, and this was a dumb hill to be dying on. We just decided this is stupid. We're not going to really worry about it anymore. But right now, based on what I'm seeing a polarization of it. And I think that's going to continue until some of this other stuff pushes people to the breaking point where there's no room left in the capacity tank for this to consume any space. So we'll see. Obviously if, and I don't like buying into all the hype stuff, but if all of a sudden some other pandemic blew up, if bird flu actually ended up doing something, if some super virus came, like I have no idea. If AI all of a sudden did radically disrupt things, might this just completely blow things up? Well, sure. But I hope we can mitigate this one without having to have something like that happen. All right. This one will be a little bit shorter. But one of the things that I've been watching that I think is going to become important for us as we think about 2025 is how cybersecurity in some ways is going to become exponentially more complex, but in some ways it's actually going to become dumber or need to become, and I don't mean dumber like stupid, I mean simpler. And the reason for that is, as these AI models continue to become more advanced, as you can start to create deepfake content like you've never created anything before, our traditional models of encryption, our traditional models of password protection, of system architecture, they're going to become exponentially more complex. And that's going to be a real pain point for CISOs and other security officers and things like that. Where I think in some ways for the IT security folks that I talk to, which is if you are one, you're probably like, yeah, I know, Christopher, I'm dealing with it every day. But it's going to get worse. It's going to get harder. It's going to get more complex. You're going to have to deal with more breaches and data breaks and attacks, and all this stuff is just going to go up, and it's going to start hitting. So here's to my small to medium-sized business folks who might be listening to this. If you're not taking your cybersecurity seriously, you should. And by that, I mean, like, if you're using analog tech, or you haven't had, maybe a cybersecurity group come in and just do a basic test on your systems and say, how vulnerable are you as an organization? The cloud's not going to protect you, things like that. And, do you have the right insurances to make sure that if something happens, you can cover for it and all that good stuff? The small, medium businesses, they kind of didn't really have to worry about this as much, because it was like, well, hackers really maybe weren't as concerned about us because they didn't even know how to find us. Well, now with AI, it's much easier to find you. And even I would say the same is true for users. You might say, oh, I don't worry about secure passwords or any of that stupid stuff because I'm just Joe or Jane Doe, and nobody cares about me and what I do and whatever, and they don't have capacity. They're going after Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Joe Biden type things. Well, now, with as easy as it is, as powerful as this technology is, they're going for, it's actually in some ways the less visible folks that are easier targets, because now you've got the technology to go for the masses, and they've got a higher conversion rate because they're less likely to be secure. There's less likely to notice when they even have it happen, and they are less equipped to actually respond to it well. So I think we're going to start to see this shift, which that's probably a mass majority of who listens to my stuff. That's you. So if you are not taking, if your password is still password or your birthday or what, don't do that kind of stuff. If you don't use two-factor authentication, you should enable that kind of stuff. And that's what I mean, where securing this stuff for the average user is going to get dumber, in that, having a system send a text message to you to make sure you actually did it, and then you type it in, type of a thing. That's the kind of stuff that's going to help protect folks. So I think my concern for folks is, this is a thing that people always think it's somebody else, it's somebody famous, it's somebody whatever who really needs to be careful. I just am, I grew up in a very small town, and, people just thought this is never going to come for me, and it will. And I think we're going to start to see that in exponential droves in 2025, as this technology just continues to get in the hands of the masses, and the masses just become an easier target to shoot at, where before it just wasn't practical. So that's what I think. We'll see. Again, I'm curious to see how this plays out. This isn't one that I think is, oh, well, this could be good. I mean, I guess in some ways it could, because it could force us to just be more careful about what we do, and maybe be less likely to just sign up for that thing and create that account that you don't really need, and you don't really know why you do it, but you do it anyway, and you use the same password for that as you use for your bank, and it's to sign which Disney character are you interested in, type of a thing. And you go, why did I even make this account? So I'm hoping that we respond to that and we can mitigate some of the risks of this, but we'll see. All right, number 9 is one that I have mixed feelings on in terms of my prediction about this. I posted about this. So I broke my digital fast once over the break, and it was because I saw something on LinkedIn where everyone and their mother was signing up for this and this goes back to my cybersecurity, this random no-name site that would give you a AI generated image of your highlights for the year. All you had to do is agree to these terms of service and give them, let them scrape your LinkedIn stuff. And people were doing it in droves. And even though I was on a digital fast, I'm like, oh my gosh, because I went in and read the terms of service of this thing. And I know I'm going to get the lawyers. Actually, no, I talked to a lawyer about it. And I'm like, is this just me being, overprotective of stuff? And they're like, no, these are actually pretty bad terms, especially when you consider what you're getting in return. But anyway, I say that because, of course, I'm going to get the folks that are like, oh, it's the world we live in and your data doesn't matter anymore because everybody has it anyway. And I get there's that attitude, but I think we're going to see people, again, falling into two camps. We're either going to have the people who are hyper vigilant and might be paranoid and they don't sign up for anything because, well, this terms of service says that this, and it's like, well, so what are you going to do? Because literally everything you do, signing up for your energy bill requires those same terms of service. So you're going to not get your energy bill type of a thing. So you're going to have those folks. And then you're going to have the folks who go, my data's out there anyway. Anybody who wants it's going to steal it and blah, blah, blah. So who cares? I might as well just throw caution to the wind and give it to everybody and get what I want out of it. I think those people, we're going to have that camp of folks. And where I think we're going to hopefully start to see people is moving more towards the middle and recognizing that their data is valuable. And if you don't know that and believe that, your data is valuable. And you should be conscious and consenting to when and where and how your data is being used. And I'm starting to see this growing movement of people who say, I agree with that. And you know what? I'm not going to participate in some of these things. And so the post that I came off my digital fast to say was, hey, everybody, I see you all sharing this thing. Did you even read the terms of service behind this? And did you consciously say to yourself, I know I'm giving this up, but I'm fine with that because I get this cute little thumbnail that I get to share on social media and tell everybody what a great year I had. Is it worth it? Was that transaction worth it? And the response from people was universally almost, no way. I had no idea that that's what I was getting up for. And so there is this growing awareness that, hey, my data is valuable. And yes, I'm okay with sharing my data, with people using my data, but there needs to be a value-based transaction for that to occur. And I think more people are starting to move towards the middle. Now, what could that look like in 2025? I don't know. One of the things I would caution people about is there are already some of these companies spinning up that are saying like, we'll pay you for your data. And it's data monetization where they'll basically be a broker for you and they'll go around and police everybody. And in return, anybody who uses your data has to pay them. And then you get a percentage of that. I get it can sound really good on the surface, but man, some of the snake oil scams out there right now, just be careful of this stuff. Anybody who's like, hey, I'll give you money for free for your data and I'll protect it and I'll give you a cut. Like it's not a fair deal. I'll just tell you that. But I do think we are going to start to see this merging towards the middle where people are going to demand to know, hey, what are you doing with my data? Where is it going? Why is it being used? Why are you requiring this much data for me? Type of a thing. And we already see that in the EU. I know a large part of my audience is in the US. We're already seeing that outside of the US. I think we're going to start to see more of that in the US in 2025. So how do you prepare for that? Well, one, watch out for these scams because I guarantee some influencer on some platform is going to tell you XYZ company will pay you money for your data type of a thing. I've already seen it in some instances where it's like, hey, if you sign up for this, we'll give you a free subscription to Paramount Plus, and all you have to do is give us access to your entire purchase history. And it's like, is Paramount Plus really worth everything you buy? Somebody knowing that you don't really know who knows that and that who they're brokering that data to and how it's being used. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe you really love SpongeBob SquarePants and it's totally worth it to you. I mean, fine. But just be careful because I think as people are starting to become more aware of this, I'm already seeing companies start to respond by going, well, now how do we give the appearance of value because people are willing to give their data. They just need to feel like they're getting enough value. And so just be careful that you're actually critically analyzing, is what I'm getting in return actually worth the transaction? And do I understand that my data is actually valuable? And do I understand how it's being used and why it's being used and where is it going and what right do I have over it? And something I told people in my post was, hey, if you're signing terms and agreements for things, the least you can do is copy all those terms, post it into your favorite Gen AI platform and say, talk to me like I'm a middle schooler. Explain to me what these terms and conditions mean for me. What are the implications on me? And what am I getting in return for these things? And have it explain it to you. Have it tell you what you're getting and ask it questions, because it can do a pretty good job of telling you that. And just decide. It's not right or wrong. It's not don't sign up for anything. I'm not advocating never sign up for anything because your bank's going to get hacked and you're going to lose your retirement and the world's going to end on you. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is take the time to understand, what am I authorizing? And is it worth what I'm getting in return? And that's where this one I came off my fast for was, you really want to give somebody access to everything you've created, and you're literally signing a thing saying you have the right to take it, use it, make money off of it, create stuff and use my name and my likeness in regard to it. And you've got my consent to do it. And in return, I get an AI generated thumbnail. Just to me, that's not a value-based transaction. And I think that's the part that I would just encourage with this. But we'll see what happens in 2025. And, there might be some big regulations that come through. We'll see. I'm interested to follow this one. All right. Last one. I told you that I was gonna, this was a big one. So the last one is, there's this growing need for purpose and meaning that I am seeing in this. And I see this both professionally, I see it personally. Gallup had a study where they said 61% of employees, they don't feel connected to their work's purpose at all. And this was up from 48% in 2018. So in the short span of a year, double-digit increase in employees going, I don't even know what I'm doing here or what we're doing as a company. I just really don't even know why we do what we do. It doesn't really seem to matter all that much. There is a massive increase in people seeking out. There's like 25% or something like that. It was by Pew Research, something like that. It was just done last year. And people seeking and curious about spirituality and understanding that there, is there something bigger, asking questions, there's something bigger than us. Is there something bigger out there? And, I see things about people practicing mindfulness, and there's a lot of new age stuff going on. And there's just people in general I see really struggling right now going, what on earth does it all mean? I personally, are there days where, I have a hard time? Sure. I don't have this personal struggle because of, and I've been very open about where my faith is. So my faith and hope is not in what this world has to offer, even though I genuinely love and appreciate so many of the things about it. But I know, and my goal is never to tell everybody that, hey, this is what I'm doing. So unless you're an idiot, you better do it my way. That's not, no, I think, but I see this in 2025 as this growing number of people who have this, what I say is a God-sized hole that they're trying to fill with everything else. And it's not working. And there's a lot of empty promises right now of, well, hey, if you just start your own business, if you just get that bigger job, if you just go work for your dream company, if you just have a bigger house, if you just do all this stuff, then you'll finally get there. And I'm seeing a lot of people reaching a point where they're going, yeah, but that's not working. I'm still empty. I'm still struggling. I'm still feeling like, what does this even all mean? And I think the risk I see with that, so like I said, my goal in this is not to say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and so therefore you have to walk my path. I think this is a personal journey that everyone needs to go through, and everybody is going to need to spend some time examining where really am I looking for my purpose. But I think one of the things that I have concerns about, so here's my warning to people for 2025. I fully anticipate, and it's already starting to happen, that technology, in addition to the usual things, right? Money, sex, all these other things, they're going to fill this stuff up. It's not. And we know that. But I think the one that's going to be newer and is going to present new temptations for people to go, maybe this will be the thing, is technology. And I get some people might go, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't believe an AI bot is going to solve my problems. I get you might not think that. But I'm watching the addiction rates to AI bots. I'm watching people start to develop and maintain relationships with completely artificial entities that are not their own or that are not human beings, and not seeing the issue with that because it fills the void that the real people in my life don't fill. I'm seeing people buy into the promise, and AI just announced that healthcare is going to be its major area of focus in 2025. I literally know people whose goal is to just not die in the next 10 years because they're convinced technology is going to let them be immortal soon. We're going to cure every disease. We're going to be able to do all this stuff. And so we're at this very dangerous place right now where the amount of people who have this hole that they don't know what to do with and they're struggling with, and technology that they're unfamiliar with, but seems to be promising some really, really, really incredible things. And all of a sudden you merge these together, and there's a lot of people that I think are going to get hurt in 2025. Because unlike a lot of other things, I talk a lot about the fact that AI amplifies and accelerates what's already in place. It's not creating anything new. It's simply amplifying and accelerating what's already there. And so I look back at human history, and a lot of the things we've historically tried to fill these holes with, they take time. It takes you a while to realize it's leaving you completely hollow and empty. I was talking with my kids about it, Notch, the guy who created Minecraft, nothing but wanted to build this game, ended up selling out to Microsoft for $2.5 billion, and he's completely miserable. He has everything he thought he ever wanted, and he's miserable. But it took years for him to get there. I think the concern I have with technology is that's not going to take decades or years or potentially even months for people to start to experience the consequences of trying to fill a void with something that is fundamentally incapable of supporting and sustaining it. And so that goes back to my earlier point. I think we run the risk of seeing some really serious mental health issues in 2025. And I think this is largely the underlying root cause of this, is people are already seeking greater purpose. It's just a continually growing need, and they're looking to all sorts of things to find it. And the newest player on the stage is technology, and it's offering a lot of very, very convincing, very, very lucrative promises to fill it. And what I can tell you right now is it won't. It won't. And the harm it will cause will hit a lot harder and a lot faster than some of these other ones that people have tried in the past. And so I think as we go into 2025, my caution would just be spend a little time on what really matters to you. Where are you looking for your purpose? And what does that actually mean to you to find purpose? And seek out other people who seem to have cracked that and explore that. And of course, I'm going to advocate and say, you know what, it's been a very decades long journey of my walk as a Christian to help me find that purpose. Of course, I'm going to advocate that because I want you to experience the same fulfillment and joy and satisfaction that I have. But I'm not here to try and win you over and tell you, well, if you conclude differently, I think you're dumb, because I don't. And I think we all have to figure that out, and we're all on our own thing. But take the time to do that, because if you don't take the time to do that, I think that's going to make you exponentially more vulnerable in 2025. Because if you're not thinking about it, if you're not investing in it, if you're not taking time to actually be aware of what's going on in here, you're going to get swindled. You're going to get sold some of these promises that will leave you hurting in the end. So those are my top 10. I will see where we land. Let me know what you thought. Give me your feedback. Leave it in the comments. Send me a message, whatever you want to do. And with that, we will see you next week.